The emergency lights flashed red across the massive council chamber. Ambassador Taiyang sat quietly in his chair, watching the chaos unfold around him. Representatives from 247 different species were shouting, arguing, and some were even crying. The galaxy was dying and nobody knew what to do about it. High Chancellor Vexthar stood at the center podium. His insect-like body trembled as he tried to call for order. He was 300 years old and had never seen anything like this. The Void Swarm had destroyed 17 star systems in just 3 months. 40 billion lives were gone. The Council's mighty fleets, the pride of the galaxy, had been crushed in every battle. Taiyang had been Earth's ambassador for 12 years. 12 long years of trying to convince the Council that humans were civilized, that they could be trusted, that they weren't the violent savages their history suggested. 12 years of peace. Now all of that was about to end. A reptilian general named Rixnall slammed his clawed hand on the table. His species had lost 3 entire colony worlds to the swarm. "We must have a solution," he roared. "Every strategy has failed. Every weapon we possess is useless. The swarm adapts to everything within hours." Vexthar's mandibles clicked nervously. "We are running out of time. Our scientists predict complete galactic collapse within 6 months. Every species in this chamber will be extinct. Our civilizations, our cultures, everything we have built over thousands of years will be consumed." The chamber fell silent. It was the silence of despair. Taiyang looked around at the faces of beings from across the galaxy. He saw fear. He saw hopelessness. He saw species that had lived in peace for centuries now facing their end. Commander Hana stood behind Taiyang. She was his military liaison, though the Council had never wanted human military involvement. They thought humans were too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable. They had made sure Earth's forces were never integrated into the Council's defense network. Now Hana watched the Council's panic with cold eyes. "Perhaps we should evacuate," suggested a blue-skinned delegate from the Antari system. "Take our people and flee to the outer rim. Maybe the swarm won't follow." "Flee where?" Rixnall snapped. "The swarm is everywhere. It moves faster than we can evacuate. For every ship we save, 10 more worlds are consumed." Taiyang stood up slowly. The movement was subtle, but Hana noticed. She knew what was coming. They had discussed this possibility many times over the years, always hoping it would never be necessary. "High Chancellor," Taiyang said quietly. His voice was calm, almost too calm for the chaos around him. "There is one option you have not considered." Vexthar turned to look at the human ambassador. "Ambassador Taiyang, unless you have a miracle weapon hidden on Earth, I do not think there is anything left to try." "Not a weapon," Taiyang replied. "A species. You could unleash the humans." The chamber exploded with noise. Delegates jumped to their feet. Some shouted in anger. Others gasped in shock. A few looked at Taiyang as if he had lost his mind. "The humans?" Rixnall's voice dripped with contempt. "The species we specifically excluded from military operations? The primitives who still have weapons capable of destroying their own planet? You want us to trust them with the fate of the galaxy?" Taiyang remained standing, his expression unchanged. "Yes, that is exactly what I am suggesting." Vexthar raised a hand for silence. It took several minutes for the chamber to quiet down. "Ambassador Taiyang, you must understand how this sounds. Humanity has been part of this council for only 12 years. Your species has a history of constant warfare. Your planet's records show thousands of years of killing each other. We have kept you out of military matters precisely because we feared what you might do." "I know," Taiyang said. "We know what you think of us. We have spent 12 years trying to prove we are not the monsters you believe we are. We accepted your restrictions. We followed your rules. We kept our military small and our weapons locked away. We tried to be the peaceful species you wanted us to be." He paused, letting his words sink in. "But the swarm does not care about peace. It does not negotiate. It does not stop. You need someone who understands that kind of enemy. Someone who knows how to fight without mercy when mercy means extinction." Commander Hana stepped forward and placed a datapad on the podium. "This contains Earth's military assessment of the Void Swarm. We have been studying it since its first appearance. We have analyzed every battle, every tactic, every adaptation, and we have 17 different battle plans ready to implement." Vexthar stared at the datapad as if it were a dangerous animal. "You have been planning for this?" "Without council authorization?" "We plan for everything," Hana said simply. "That is what humans do. We prepare for war even when we hope for peace. It is in our nature." Rixnall laughed bitterly. This is insane. You want us to give military authority to the most violent species in the galaxy? What happens after the swarm is defeated? What happens when you turn those weapons on us? Taeyang met the general's eyes. If the swarm is not defeated, there will be no after. There will be nothing. No council. No civilizations, no life. Just the swarm, consuming everything until the galaxy is empty. The chamber was silent again, but this time it was different. It was the silence of beings forced to consider the unthinkable. Several delegates were already reviewing the data on their screens. The casualty numbers from the latest swarm attacks were devastating. 3 more systems had gone dark just that morning. A small furred delegate from the Kalari system spoke up. Her voice was quiet but clear. What would you need from us? If we agreed to this madness, what would humanity require? Hana answered immediately. Full military authorization, no restrictions on weapons or tactics, access to all intelligence about the swarm, and most importantly, you need to understand that war is not clean. People will die. Many people. Maybe millions. But if we do not fight, billions will die instead. Vexthar picked up the datapad. His hands were shaking. He had ruled the council for 70 years. He had overseen an era of unprecedented peace and prosperity. Now he was being asked to unleash something that terrified him almost as much as the swarm itself. I need time, he said finally. This decision cannot be made lightly. We will review your assessment. We will consider our options. The council will vote within 48 hours. Taeyang nodded. 48 hours. But know this, Chancellor. Every hour we delay, more people die. The swarm does not rest. It does not hesitate. If you want to survive, you need to be willing to do what they do. You need to be willing to fight without mercy. As the delegates filed out of the chamber, Hana leaned close to Taeyang. Do you think they will agree? Taeyang watched Vexthar clutching the datapad. They are terrified of us, but they are more terrified of extinction. Yes, they will agree. They have no choice. That night, Vexthar sat alone in his private chambers. He opened the datapad and began reading. What he saw made his blood run cold. The humans had not just prepared one battle plan. They had prepared 17, each more brutal than the last. Each one included casualty projections that would be considered genocidal by any council standard. Each one treated human lives as acceptable losses if it meant destroying the enemy. But most disturbing was the final section. It was titled simply, Why We Will Win. The analysis was cold and precise. Humans had fought wars where millions died and they kept fighting. They had survived near-extinction events and became stronger. They had words in their languages for sacrificing everything for victory. They understood something the Council had forgotten in its millennia of peace. Sometimes survival requires becoming something terrible. Vexthar closed the datapad and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the swarm was consuming another world. Somewhere out there, beings like himself were dying by the billions. He had a choice to make. Let the galaxy die while clinging to principles, or unleash humanity and pray they could be controlled afterward. It was not really a choice at all. 48 hours felt like an eternity. Vexthar called together his inner council in a secure chamber deep inside the station. These were beings he had worked with for decades, representatives who understood the weight of impossible decisions. They gathered around a holographic display showing the human military assessment. The first file they opened was a historical record. It showed Earth's wars. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. Conflicts that lasted years, decades, sometimes generations. The council members watched in growing horror as humans killed each other with ever more creative and terrible weapons. Swords, guns, bombs, chemical gas, biological weapons, nuclear fire. The death toll was staggering. Billions of humans had died in wars against other humans. This is what they do to their own kind, whispered one delegate. What would they do to the swarm? Vexthar opened another file. This one contained Earth's current military capabilities, weapons that had been hidden from the Council for 12 years. Kinetic weapons that could strike from orbit with the force of nuclear bombs, biological agents that could wipe out entire ecosystems, energy weapons that could cut through starship hulls like paper. And those were just the conventional weapons. The classified weapons were worse, much worse. Humanity had kept developing war technology even while pretending to be peaceful. They had bombs that could ignite atmospheres, viruses that could corrupt machine intelligence, weapons that violated every treaty the Council had ever written. Why? asked Rixnall, who had been invited to this meeting. Why develop these horrors if they wanted peace? Dr. Yuna appeared on the holographic display. She was a human scientist who studied why her own species was different from every other intelligent life in the galaxy. Vexthar had requested her presence to help them understand what they were dealing with. Humans prepare for war because we remember what happens when we are not prepared, Yuna explained. Her voice was calm, almost apologetic. Every human culture has stories of being conquered, enslaved, or destroyed. We have a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. We hoped for peace with you, but we prepared for the possibility that peace would not last. She brought up another display. This one showed evolutionary charts. Every species in the Council evolved as either predator, prey, or symbiote. You learn to hunt, to hide, or to cooperate. Your instincts make sense for survival. Humans are different. We evolved as both predator and prey. The chart showed early human ancestors. Small primates living in African forests hunted by big cats, snakes, and birds of prey. But these same primates learned to hunt back. They made tools. They used fire. They turned from prey into predator. This created something unique, Yuna continued. We have the fear instincts of prey animals. We know what it feels like to be hunted, but we also have the aggression of predators. We know how to hunt. This combination means we can be terrified and still attack. We can know we might die and fight anyway. No other species has this psychology. Vexthar felt his mandibles clicking nervously. So you are saying humans are naturally violent because of evolution? Not just violent, Yuna corrected. We are survivors. When humans are trapped, when we face extinction, we do not just fight back. We fight with everything we have. We have a concept in our military doctrine called acceptable losses. It means we will sacrifice thousands, even millions, if it means winning. Other species retreat when losses get too high. Humans calculate if the cost is worth the victory and keep fighting if it is. The council chamber was silent. They were beginning to understand what they were considering unleashing. This was not just a species with powerful weapons. This was a species that thought about war differently than anyone else in the galaxy. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Minho stood in the war room deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. Around him, holographic displays showed star maps, fleet positions, and tactical analyses. He had known this day would come. Humanity had been patient, playing the role of peaceful newcomers to galactic society. But they had never stopped preparing. Commander Hana had returned to Earth and now stood beside Minho. The council is reviewing our files. Vexthar looked ready to run away when I gave him the data pad. Minho smiled grimly. Good, they should be afraid. They should understand what they are asking for. He pulled up a different set of files, ones that had not been shared with the council. These are the real battle plans. What we gave them was the gentle version. Captain Ji-Won entered the room. She commanded Earth's special forces, the units that handled missions too dangerous or too dark for regular military. Sir, the teams are ready. If the council approves, we can deploy within 24 hours. What about the Prometheus device? Minho asked. Ji-Won hesitated. Engineer Deho says it is ready. But sir, that weapon violates every treaty we have ever signed. It breaks laws that even the council considers sacred. If we use it, there is no going back. Every species in the galaxy will know what we are capable of. Let them know, Minho said coldly. The council kept us out of their wars because they thought we were too dangerous. Time to prove them right. Back on the council station, Vexthar called for a vote. Every delegate had reviewed the files. Every delegate understood what was being proposed. They would give humanity complete military authority. No restrictions. No oversight. Total freedom to wage war however they saw fit. The vote was not unanimous. 53 species voted against it. They argued that unleashing humanity was more dangerous than the swarm. They said it was better to die with principles than to survive by becoming monsters. But 194 species voted yes. They chose survival over principles. Vexthar sent the message personally. His hands shook as he recorded it. General Minho of Earth, this is High Chancellor Vexithar of the Galactic Council. By vote of the assembled species, humanity is hereby granted full military authorization. You may conduct operations without restriction. You have our resources, our intelligence, and our desperate hope. Save us, and may the ancestors forgive us for what we have unleashed. The message reached Earth within minutes. Minho played it for his command staff. Then he turned to the display showing Earth's military forces. Thousands of ships in orbit. Millions of soldiers ready to deploy. weapons that most of the galaxy did not know existed. Begin mobilization, he ordered. Full war production. Activate all reserves. Open the sealed armories. It is time to show the galaxy what humanity can do when we stop holding back. Across Earth and its colonies, alarms sounded. Factories that had been making civilian goods switched to weapons production. Shipyards began constructing warships at maximum speed. Men and women reported to recruitment centers. This was not a small deployment. This was total war. Ambassador Taiyang received a message from Minho. It contained only 3 words. We are ready. Taiyang stood on the observation deck of the council station, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the swarm was consuming worlds. Soon, very soon, they would learn what happened when you threatened humanity's home. They would learn what humans became when peace was no longer an option. He thought about the 12 years of peace, the effort it took to convince the council that humans could be civilized. The restraint humanity had shown. All of that was over now. The mask was coming off. I hope you know what you have done, he whispered to the empty observation deck. You asked for monsters to fight your monsters. Now you will see what real monsters look like. On Earth, Engineer Deho worked in a secret laboratory. He was making final adjustments to weapons that had been theoretical for decades. Weapons that violated the laws of civilized warfare. Weapons that the Council would never approve if they knew about them. But the Council had given up their right to approve or disapprove. They had granted humanity full authority. They had said no restrictions. They had no idea what they had agreed to. Deho looked at his latest creation and smiled. It was not a kind smile. The swarm thinks it is the most dangerous thing in the galaxy, he said to himself. It is about to learn otherwise. Earth transformed overnight. The peaceful planet that had spent 12 years proving it was civilized suddenly became a war machine. Every city, every colony, every orbital station shifted into combat mode. The transformation was so fast and so complete that Council observers could barely believe what they were seeing. Admiral Hyun stood on the bridge of the EDF Retribution, Earth's largest warship. Around him, displays showed the gathering fleet. 2,000 warships, all built in secret over the past 12 years. The Council thought humanity had a small defensive force. They were wrong. Humans had been preparing for this day since the moment they joined the Council. Status report, Hyun commanded. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Kira, pulled up the data. All ships ready for deployment. Weapon systems at full capacity. Crews are prepared. We can jump to Deltara within the hour. Deltara, a system the Council had tried to retake 3 times. 3 times they had sent fleets of thousands. 3 times they had been destroyed. The swarm held Deltara now, using it as a staging ground for further expansion. Intelligence suggested 10,000 swarm vessels were stationed there. Commander Hana had calculated that taking Deltara would require 200 human ships. The survival rate was projected at 23%. That meant 154 ships would be destroyed. Thousands of humans would die. Every captain had been told these numbers. Every single one had volunteered. The Council lost thousands of ships trying to take that system. Kira said quietly, "We are only sending 200. How can we succeed where they failed?" Hyun smiled coldly. "Because the Council fights to preserve life. We are going to fight to destroy it. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier we have is aimed at one goal, ending the swarm. Not capturing territory. Not taking prisoners. Just complete annihilation." In the weapons bay, Engineer Deho oversaw the loading of his newest creation. He called them Spitfire platforms. They were automated weapon systems, each one the size of a small ship. They carried enough firepower to destroy a swarm cruiser, and were powered by miniaturized fusion cores. When the cores were damaged, they exploded with the force of a small sun. These platforms do not retreat, Deho explained to the weapons officers. They do not negotiate. They do not stop firing until they are destroyed. And when they are destroyed, they take everything nearby with them. The swarm will learn that even destroying our weapons comes at a terrible cost. Colonel Sora gathered her Marines in the landing bays. These were the soldiers who would board swarm vessels and fight hand to hand. She looked at the faces of men and women who knew exactly how dangerous their mission was. Many of them would not come back. They knew it. She knew it. They were ready anyway. The swarm thinks we are weak because we are individuals, Sora told her troops. They think their hive mind makes them superior. They are wrong. Yes, we are individuals, but we choose to fight together. We choose to sacrifice for each other. That choice, that willingness to die for something bigger than ourselves, that is what makes us strong. The Marines roared their approval. They painted symbols on their armor, ancient human war marks from cultures across Earth's history. Spartans, samurai, Vikings, Aztec warriors. Every human tradition of warfare was honored in those symbols. Humanity was going to war, and they carried thousands of years of experience with them. Captain Jiwon prepared her Special Forces team for a different mission. They would not fight in the main battle. Their job was infiltration. They would board the largest swarm vessel, plant a quantum bomb in its core, and detonate it from inside. Intelligence said the explosion would destroy every swarm ship within 10 light years. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew it. The chance of escape after planting the bomb was less than 1%. Jiwon had asked for volunteers from the entire Special Forces division. 50 soldiers stepped forward. She had to turn away hundreds more. "We do not expect to come back," Jiwon told her team. "We do not expect rescue. We go in, we complete the mission, and we end those things. If we die doing it, we die knowing we saved billions. That is enough." Her soldiers nodded. They had all written final messages to their families. They had all made peace with what was coming. Fear was there, yes, but so was determination. So was anger at what the swarm had done to innocent worlds. So was the very human need for revenge. Council observers watched the preparations from a safe distance. They had been invited to witness humanity's military deployment. What they saw horrified them. These humans were not reluctant warriors forced into battle. They were eager. They wanted this fight. They had been waiting for it. A Kalari observer spoke to Commander Hana. "Your people seem almost happy about going to war. Do they not understand how many will die?" Hana looked at the observer with cold eyes. "They understand perfectly. They also understand that sometimes death is preferable to surrender. We have a phrase in human military culture, death before dishonor. We would rather die fighting than live as slaves to the swarm." "But so many of you will die," the observer protested. "Yes," Hana agreed, "but more of them will die. That is all that matters." The night before deployment, soldiers across the fleet gathered in mess halls and recreation areas. They shared stories. They sang songs from their home cultures. They remembered why they were fighting. Some prayed to gods their ancestors had worshipped. Some simply sat in silence, preparing themselves mentally for what was coming. Lieutenant Kira found a quiet corner and recorded a message for her family. "Mom, Dad, if you are watching this, it means I did not make it back. I want you to know I was not afraid. Well, I was afraid, but I did it anyway. That is what it means to be human, right? We feel fear and we fight through it. I love you. Tell my little brother to be brave. Tell him his sister died making sure he would have a future. She was not alone." Thousands of soldiers recorded similar messages, just in case. Humans always planned for the worst. General Minho addressed the fleet on the morning of departure. His image appeared on every screen, in every ship, in every barracks. "Soldiers of Earth, today we begin the greatest campaign in human history. The galaxy is counting on us. Billions of lives depend on our success. The Council gave us this mission because no one else could do it. They were right." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We are not the strongest species. We are not the smartest. We are not the most advanced. But we have something no other species has. We have the willingness to pay any price for victory. We have the courage to face impossible odds. We have the stubbornness to never ever give up. The swarm thinks it is unstoppable. It has consumed 17 systems. It has killed billions. It has never been defeated. Today that changes. Today it meets humanity, and it will learn what every predator eventually learns. There is always something more dangerous. We are that something. Go forth and show them what humans can do. Make them regret ever threatening our galaxy." The fleet cheered. 2,000 warships prepared for jump. Admiral Hyun gave the order. "All ships enter coordinates for Deltara. Prepare for FTL jump. And remember, we do not stop until they are all dead or we are. There is no middle ground. No retreat. No surrender. We are humanity. We do not yield." Space tore open as the fleet jumped to faster than light speed. They left Earth's system behind, heading toward the front lines, heading toward the swarm, heading toward a battle that would decide the fate of the galaxy. On the Council station, Vexthar watched the fleet disappear into FTL. He felt sick with worry. Had he done the right thing? Had he saved the galaxy or doomed it? Only time would tell. He sent a silent prayer to his ancestors, hoping they would forgive him for what he had unleashed. The human fleet dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Deltara system. Immediately, alarms screamed across every ship. The swarm had detected them. Thousands of biomechanical vessels began moving into defensive formations, the same formations that had destroyed 3 Council fleets. Admiral Hyan watched the swarm arrange themselves on his tactical display. He smiled. Good. They were doing exactly what Commander Hana had predicted. The swarm adapted to threats, but they adapted using patterns based on previous battles. They expected the humans to fight like the Council. They were wrong. All ships begin Protocol Fenrir. Hyun ordered calmly. Deploy the Spitfire platforms. Target their defensive line. 500 autonomous weapons platforms launched from the human fleet. They accelerated toward the swarm's front line, firing as they went. Missiles, lasers, kinetic rounds, everything they had. The swarm responded efficiently, destroying the platforms one by one. Too easy. The swarm had adapted to this kind of attack before, but as each platform was destroyed, its fusion core detonated. 500 miniature suns bloomed across space. The electromagnetic pulses from the explosions washed over the swarm vessels, disrupting their communications. For a brief moment, the hive-mind connection flickered. That moment was all the humans needed. Phase 2, Hyun commanded. Launch kinetic bombardment. Target the planets. Millions of projectiles fired from the human fleet. They were not aimed at swarm ships. They were aimed at the 3 planets in the Deltara system, all occupied by the swarm. The projectiles were small, just grains of sand, but they were moving at 90% light speed. Each one hit with more force than a nuclear weapon. The swarm immediately diverted ships to protect the planets. They needed the biomass. They needed the resources. This was exactly what Hana had calculated they would do. The defensive line weakened as thousands of swarm vessels rushed to intercept the kinetic bombardment. All ships, Phase 3. Punch through and engage, Hyun ordered. The human warships charged forward. No fancy formations, no careful positioning, just raw, brutal speed. They crashed through the weakened swarm line and began systematically destroying everything in range. Human weapons were different from Council weapons. They were not designed to be efficient or clean. They were designed to cause maximum damage. Lieutenant Kira flew her fighter through the chaos. Swarm interceptors swarmed around her, but she had trained for this. Every human pilot had trained for fighting against overwhelming numbers. She fired, destroyed an enemy, dove, fired again. Her fighter took hits. Alarms screamed. She ignored them and kept fighting. A swarm interceptor clipped her wing. Her fighter spun out of control. She fought the controls, trying to stabilize, but it was no use. "This is Kira, I am going down," she transmitted. Then her fighter exploded, but her escape pod launched a split second before the explosion. A rescue ship picked her up 20 minutes later. As soon as she was aboard, she demanded another fighter. The rescue crew thought she was crazy. She just stared at them until they complied. The battle raged for 3 hours. The swarm adapted quickly. They developed countermeasures for the EMP bursts. They created point defense against the kinetic weapons. They learned human attack patterns and adjusted their tactics. Admiral Hyun watched this adaptation with satisfaction. Good, they are learning. They are adapting. They are using resources and processing power to counter our tactics. He turned to his tactical officer. Begin Phase 4. Deploy the real weapons. The weapons unleashed in Phase 4 were nothing like what came before. Biological viruses designed to corrupt swarm organic components. Digital viruses that spread through their hive mind network. Psychological warfare broadcasts that caused confusion in their collective consciousness. Weapons the Council had banned thousands of years ago. The swarm had adapted to fight the first weapons. Now those adaptations became weaknesses. The specialized defenses they had developed left them vulnerable to completely different attacks. The humans had not been trying to win with the first weapons. They had been teaching the swarm to defend against the wrong threat. While the main battle raged, Captain Jiwon's infiltration team approached the largest swarm vessel. It was a massive thing, 3 kilometers long, part machine and part living organism. Getting inside would be nearly impossible. Surviving inside would be even harder. They attached their boarding pod to the hull. Cutting through took 20 minutes. Swarm defenders met them immediately. The fighting was brutal and close. Jiwon's team used weapons designed for boarding actions. Shotguns, blades, explosives. Half her team died in the first hour. They pushed forward through corridors that seemed designed to drive humans insane. Everything was organic, pulsing with life. The walls oozed fluids. The air was thick with spores. Swarm creatures attacked from everywhere, flowing through passages too small for humans to follow. "Keep moving," Jiwan shouted. "We do not stop. We do not slow down. Get to the core." They fought for 3 more hours inside that nightmare. Soldiers died one by one. By the time they reached the core, only 7 remained from the original 50. Jiwan was wounded, bleeding from a dozen cuts. She did not care. The mission was all that mattered. The core was a massive chamber filled with biological and technological components merged together. This was the heart of the swarm vessel. This was where the hive-mind connection was strongest. This was where Engineer Daho's quantum bomb needed to be placed. Jiwan activated the device and set it for 30 seconds. "Everyone out, now!" But even as she said it, she knew they would not make it. The swarm was flooding the corridors. They were surrounded. One of her soldiers, a young man named Taman, grabbed the bomb. "Go, I will hold them!" Before anyone could argue, he ran deeper into the core, firing his weapon at the swarm creatures pursuing them. Jiwan wanted to go back for him. Wanted to save him. But the mission. Always the mission. She ran with her remaining team, fighting their way back toward the boarding pod. Behind them, they heard Taman's weapon fire. Then screaming. Then silence. They reached the pod with 5 seconds to spare. The pod launched. 3 seconds? They cleared the hull. 1 second. The quantum bomb detonated. The swarm vessel did not just explode. It unraveled at the quantum level. And because the bomb was quantum entangled with similar devices the swarm used for communication, the explosion spread. Every swarm vessel within 10 light-years experienced the same detonation simultaneously. Thousands of ships simply ceased to exist. On the Retribution's bridge, Admiral Hyun watched the tactical display as thousands of swarm signatures vanished. The entire enemy fleet in the Deltara system was gone. Just gone. "Status report," he said calmly. The tactical officer's hands shook as she read the numbers. Swarm fleet eliminated. Deltara system secured. Human casualties. 149 ships destroyed. Crew losses estimated at 74.5%. 149 ships. Thousands of humans dead. Hyun felt the weight of those numbers. Every life lost had been someone's son or daughter, someone's friend, someone's loved one. The cost was terrible, but the mission was complete. Deltara was theirs. The swarm had been dealt its first major defeat. Hyun transmitted to General Minho on Earth. "Deltara is secured. Casualty rate 74.5%. Acceptable, preparing for next target." Acceptable. That was the word that made Council observers go silent. Humans had just lost 3/4 of their force and called it acceptable. What kind of species thought that way? What kind of beings calculated death in such cold numbers? The answer was simple. A species that valued victory over survival. A species that would pay any price to win. A species that scared the Council almost as much as the swarm. News of the Deltara victory spread across the galaxy within hours. Species that had given up hope began to believe again. But alongside hope came fear. If humanity could do this to the swarm, what could they do to anyone else? The question hung in the air like smoke after battle. General Minho did not give the galaxy time to process what had happened. Within 24 hours, he launched 6 more campaigns simultaneously. Human fleets struck at swarm positions across multiple systems. There was no consolidation, no pause to recover. Just constant, relentless attack. The Council was shocked by the speed. "Why not take time to rebuild your forces?" Fexthar asked during an emergency communication with Ambassador Taiyang. "Because the swarm adapts," Taiyang explained. "Every hour we give them is an hour they use to learn from their defeat. We must keep them off balance. Keep them reacting instead of planning. Never use the same tactic twice. Never give them time to understand what we are doing." And that was exactly what humanity did. Each new battle used completely different weapons and tactics. In one system, they deployed nanite swarms that disassembled swarm vessels at the molecular level. In another, they used gravitational weapons that created miniature black holes. In a third, they contaminated an entire planet with biological agents that made it toxic to the swarm. Engineer Daiho worked 20-hour days developing new horrors. His laboratory became a factory of death, producing weapons that violated every principle of civilized warfare. He did not sleep. He barely ate. When asked if he felt guilty about what he was creating, he simply said, "Better their deaths than ours." But the cost was mounting. Earth's population was fully mobilized. Every factory, every resource, every person was devoted to the war effort. Casualty reports came in daily. Thousands dead here, tens of thousands there. The numbers climbed into the millions. Dr. Yuna studied the psychological effects on humanity. She published reports that troubled the council. Humans were exhausted. They were traumatized. They mourned their dead. But they did not stop. Could not stop. Something deep in human psychology refused to be prey, refused to submit. Even when the cost became unbearable, they kept fighting. For the first time in its existence, the Void Swarm experienced something like confusion. The hive mind processed millions of scenarios simultaneously. In every previous conquest, species fought to survive. They retreated when losses mounted. They negotiated when defeat loomed. They valued individual lives. Humans did none of these things. They fought battles they could not win if it helped the larger war. They sacrificed entire fleets as decoys. They contaminated their own territory to deny it to the swarm. They treated casualties as numbers on a spreadsheet, calculating if the trade was worth it. The swarm tried to adapt its strategy. It attempted to communicate, to negotiate. Every message was ignored. It tried to intimidate by destroying human colonies. Humanity responded by launching even more aggressive attacks. It tried to withdraw from contested systems. Human forces pursued and destroyed every retreating vessel. The swarm could not understand. These beings fought as if they wanted to die, as if destroying the enemy was more important than their own survival. It was behavior the swarm had no framework to process. Hive minds valued the collective above all. These humans seemed to value victory above even their collective survival. 3 months into the war, Vexthar sent a private message to Ambassador Taeyang. "We are grateful for what humanity is doing, but we are also terrified. When this war ends, what do we do about your species? You have shown us what you are capable of. How can we trust you will not turn these weapons on us?" Taeyang took a long time to respond. When he did, his message was careful. "We showed you what we are capable of when we have no choice. When the war ends, we will have a choice again. Trust that we will make the right one. We chose peace before, remember? We spent 12 years trying to be what you wanted us to be. We can choose peace again." But not all humans agreed with that vision. Colonel Sora led a growing faction that argued humanity should maintain its military dominance after the war. "We saved them," she told her troops. "We bled for them. They should be grateful, not afraid. Maybe the galaxy needs humanity's strength permanently." When General Minho heard about this talk, he summoned Sora to his office. "We fight because it is necessary," he told her coldly. "Not because we enjoy it. Not because we want to dominate. The day we forget that is the day we become no better than the swarm. Worse, even. At least the swarm does not know any better. We do." Sora left his office angry but silent. The debate would continue, but for now, the mission remained clear. End the swarm. Deal with the aftermath later. Intelligence reports indicated that 70% of the swarm's remaining forces were concentrated in one place, the Nexus system. It was their primary staging ground, the heart of their logistics network. If the Nexus fell, the swarm would be broken beyond recovery. Admiral Hyun studied the intelligence data. Taking the Nexus would require every available human warship, the entire fleet. If they lost, there would be no reserves, no backup, no second chance. And the projections were brutal. 90% casualties expected. He presented the plan to General Minho. "It is a gamble. If we win, we end the swarm. If we lose, Earth will be defenseless. The Council could not protect us if another threat emerged." Minho looked at the casualty projections. 90%. That meant only 1 in 10 ships would survive. Thousands of his people would die, maybe tens of thousands. He thought about the weight of that decision, the lives he would be sacrificing. Then he thought about what would happen if they did not attack. The swarm would recover. It would adapt. It would spread again. More worlds would fall. More billions would die. The war would drag on for years, maybe decades. "We attack," Minho said. "Gather every ship, every soldier. Strip Earth's orbital defenses to minimum levels. This is all or nothing." The Council heard about the plan and begged humanity to wait. "Let us help you develop a better strategy," Vexthar pleaded. "Wait until you have rebuilt your forces. Do not throw away everything in one desperate attack. Minho's response was simple. Every day we wait, more people die. More worlds fall. We end this now. If we die doing it, at least we die knowing we tried everything. The human fleet gathered. Every warship from every campaign was recalled. Ships limped back to rally points, damaged but operational. Crews that had been fighting for months without rest prepared for one final battle. They knew the odds. They went anyway. Lieutenant Kira, now a squadron commander after surviving 4 major battles, addressed her pilots. This is it. Everything we have done, everyone we have lost, it all comes down to this. The swarm thinks it is unstoppable. We are going to prove them wrong one last time. Captain Jiwan prepared another infiltration team. The losses from Deltara still haunted her. 43 soldiers dead. She remembered every name. But the mission had worked. The quantum bomb had turned the tide. She would do it again if needed, no matter the cost. On Earth, families gathered around screens to watch the fleet depart. Millions of people had loved ones in that fleet. They knew the statistics. They knew most would not come back. But they also knew their people were fighting for something bigger than themselves. Fighting to save not just humanity, but every species in the galaxy. Admiral Hyun stood on the bridge of the Retribution one last time. His ship was battered, scarred from a dozen battles. So was he, but both were still functional, still ready to fight. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. Soldiers of humanity, today we finish what the swarm started. They wanted to devour the galaxy. We're going to teach them what it means to bite off more than you can chew. For everyone we have lost, for every world they have destroyed, for every species counting on us, we are humanity, and we do not yield. The fleet jumped to FTL. Thousands of ships carrying hundreds of thousands of soldiers, heading toward the Nexus. Heading toward a battle that would decide everything. Commander Hana watched them go from the council station. She had wanted to be with the fleet, but Minho ordered her to stay. Someone needed to survive to tell humanity's story if this went wrong. She hated that order, but she obeyed. Will they succeed? Vexthar asked her. Hana looked at the empty space where the fleet had been. I do not know, but I know they will make the swarm pay for every meter of space. I know they will fight until there is nothing left to fight with, and I know that if they fail, they will fail having given everything they had. That is what it means to be human. We do not know how to do anything halfway. The galaxy waited. Billions of beings across hundreds of worlds watched their screens, hoping for news. The next few days would determine if intelligent life survived, or if the swarm consumed everything. The outcome rested on the shoulders of one species. The violent, terrifying, unstoppable humans who had finally shown the galaxy what they really were.